Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. My name is Liam, and I'm joined, as always, by Jack.
Hello.
And so today, we're going to be looking at one of my games that I've put forward, really, and that's Last Stop. So before I get stuck in, Jack, did you hear about this game at all? Did you see any trailers?
No, not until you mentioned it to me, and I suppose sort of for like the listeners, it would probably be good to know before going in that all I know about this game is what you've told me on the other episodes, so that it's got sort of a strong British identity to it. That the choices and the interactions they don't really matter that much. It's quite linear. Um, and that's about it. So I wanted to go in as blind as possible so that I wasn't sort of influenced too much by other sources, sort of like IGN and GameSpot and other sort of like game review platforms.
Yeah, definitely. So I saw a trailer. I believe it was on Instagram or YouTube, actually. And I looked at the artwork, and it's not the most breathtaking. It didn't go for realism. It's quite a unique art style. I don't know why I was really captured for some reason, and I kind of wanted to play it when I heard there was stuff to do with choices and weird things. So I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm playing this game. So as we go on, I've already completed the game. I've already got the platinum. I played it on PS4. Jack is playing it fresh, so he's just completed the first set of chapters with John, Mina, and Donna. So there's five each, I believe, and he's gone through the first one, so met all of the characters. But yeah, so before we get stuck into the stories and stuff, so something I mentioned on our very first episode of just us introducing what games we like. Um, and one thing you mentioned as well that I touched on was the Britishness of the game. So Jack, as someone who's British from Essex, who's been to London before, do you look at this game and is it something that sticks out to you, like that you can relate with?
I mean, yeah, completely. It's thrown in your face straight away, isn't it? You've got a picture of Big Ben, and it's sort of like Bang London, 1982, I think. And yeah, like the even in the first chapters, like the whole thing, it's littered with this sense of Britishness. Even in the menu, you're sat on the tube before sort of you start each story. There's moments where sort of like one of the thing I think it's Mina. She like gets into the back of a black cab. And just yeah, some of the buildings like I think you're playing as John at one point. You're like wandering down this high street, and it's sort of like, wow, yeah, that does look like a typical British high street, which I know is sort of maybe a bit of a weird point, but I was playing it and I was like, yeah, I can relate to this quite a lot actually. And me personally, anyway, I do find that I'm drawn to Britishness as a theme, not even just in video games, but in sort of movies, books, and all other types of sort of media. So yeah, like I was on board pretty much straight away, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think when it hits home, it's just nice to see. And I remember, for example, the TV show Skins, for example. Not only was it a British show, but it was set in Bristol, which is quite near my home. Most shows could be set in London, but the fact it was set in Bristol just stuck it out even more to me because it had so much more of a local feel. And that's what I really like about Last Stop. Obviously, I'm not saying it doesn't have to be American, but just the fact the game is set in Britain, in London, and there's things like you mentioned, the opening scene is on the London Underground. There's things such as double-decker buses, the black taxis you see. If you are from the UK or if you visit the UK, it will hit you in quite a specific way. And I don't know, like I thought it was quite a bold choice to have it set in the UK, but I think it works really well. Even stuff from the narration and the accents, yeah, just the choice of words and dialogue, I think it really hits home as a British person playing this. And I don't want to jump the gun, but if say you're looking at this video and you're from USA, for example, and you've played the game, I'd love to know your take on it. If there's bits you don't understand, or if the Britishness of the game is something that you really like about it, because to me it hits home, but I'd love to see it from an outside perspective, what an American or an Australian would think about this game and the scenery about it. So yeah, I'll skip straight into the story. stories. So it follows three different stories, three different characters you play as. John, Mina, and Donna is the order of them on the tube. Jack will do it based off of who you played first. So who was the first character you picked?
So I started off with Mina, and tell a lie, there was something I do vaguely remember you saying in that introductory episode, and I picked this one first. It's called Domestic Affairs, and I suppose just the word affairs brought it back to me because I know you said that the character you play as is like having an affair in the story, and I was like, oh, this might be a good one to, start off with. There's sort of potential for drama and conflict and sort of like complex moral questions. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's start with Mina then. And I suppose the actual affair part is incredibly short. And sort of tonally, you don't expect it because it's such like, I don't want to say basic artwork because that sort of sounds very condescending, but because it's not sort of hyper realistic, that scene in particular, I know I'm not just jumping into the sex scene straight away, but yeah, I was watching that bit, I was like, oh wow, like the sort of, it sort of took me by surprise a little bit in terms of the contradiction between sort of this sort of adult theme of sex and stuff and affairs, but you've got sort of like this sort of almost sort of child friendly graphics going on. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like my overall thoughts of sort of the opening chapter, I think it sort of set things up nicely. Clearly, there's this other woman called Amy, that's potentially going to be your rival in your department. I don't know if she's going for your job. Maybe I missed something. Maybe that's something you can clarify, or maybe she's just going to be someone in there that's going to be a future antagonist at your workplace. But Mina didn't seem to take it too well, and as a sort of a quick criticism with some of the dialogue choices when I was first talking to Amy, I wasn't actually intending to be a bit of a dick to her. Some of the choices that I picked when she then spoke to her, she come across like really bitchy, and I was like, I don't know if that's part of the writing or whether that's just sort of a character thing that as far as like what Mina is about. But I suppose in a good way, it does sort of set up the tension later on for if there's, in the workplace, if there's any difficulties between them. I don't know if you had a sort of similar view on that, or if it was more plain sailing and you was more friendly.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really interesting you mentioned the dialogue point there as well. So if I do take the example of a different game, like I say, our staple Golden Child game that we always use, Until Dawn. For example, there's a scene where you play as Matt, and you can either attack Mike or you can be nice to him. So the dialogues really do change your personality in the game and how the story progresses. You won't get that with Last Up. So, for example, there's a scene where Amy opens her mouth and Mina can either reply with, "Here we go, kill me," or "Great." So it's like the dialogue won't actually do anything. Mina is a pretty horrible person at times. She cheats, she undermines everyone, she looks down at everyone. And there's no way around that. That's just who Mina is. And your dialogue, it gives you the illusion of choice, but that choice won't do much. So that is definitely one of the reoccurring flaws I'll probably mention in the game. One of the worst two for it. The other one being the fact it's a very linear game. There's not much choice to explore around. You are very much forced to go down the street that the camera angle points you at. It's a nice enjoyable experience, but if you are looking to play a game for gameplay, this isn't the game for you. So yeah, Jack. The character Mina. What are your thoughts on her? Do you like her as a character?
No, not really. She doesn't come across as a particularly nice person. Clearly, she's having this affair, and clearly she's someone who she doesn't want to be challenged. She doesn't want to sort of mix with other people, particularly. and she seems quite selfish as well. So in terms of a character, no, she's not likable, but that's not always a bad thing. I think it's good to vary up characters. I mean, I'd say all of the characters in themselves are quite different. You've got obviously her, all that this sort of stuck-up businesswoman. You've got Donna, who's obviously like this sort of child, curious, has a friendship group. Then you've got John, who I don't know if he's like a single dad or if he's like just um, adopted a child or something like that. Maybe that's something that will be sort of explored later on, because he does mention social services. But yeah, I mean, the point being is that there's, in terms of personalities and characters themselves, I'm all for sort of the variety there. One of the other things I was going to mention on this episode in particular, but I think it does go into other ones as well, is there are sort of like blank faces in the world, and I think this is a bit picky, but like they don't even try to hide the fact that the other characters' faces are blank, and it's sort of like, well, I don't know, that it doesn't satisfy me really. I don't know if you feel the same, but for me it was just a bit like, oh, was there any point sort of putting them in there, because they're not really serving much.
Yeah, like I wonder if that was a specific art choice style. I don't want to mean to defend it for just no reason. Maybe that is just an absolute lazy choice. Maybe it is just one of those artistic things where it's like, oh, this is an irrelevant character, thus we won't put expressions in. Maybe to draw more emphasis on the ones that are in play. I'm unsure actually. It'd be interesting to see what they said about that. As a choice, I believe it's Annapurna Interactive who make this game. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what their thoughts were behind that. Because I think they're the same makers of the game that you recently played, 12 Hours, I believe it's called. Um, so this was the project they made just before it, the one that had James McAvoy and Willem Dafoe
Oh,
in it.
yeah, 12 minutes. Yeah, I haven't played it yet, but I do intend to get round to it.
Oh yeah, so it's the same game makers. So yeah, I don't know if the art styles would be similar, but yeah. Yeah, but I get what you're saying about Mina. So in my opinion, personality wise, the least best out of the three characters. Also, as you will see as the stories evolve, probably the weakest of the three as well. I'm much more of a fan of Donna and John's stories. So yeah, but I do agree, like you said, it's nice to have the variety. To have Mina contrasting well with the curious schoolgirl and the hardship, man who's trying to balance, life and, his work and, his family, that kind of thing. I think another reason as well, Mina falls slightly flatter on this, is probably because I can relate to the other two more, and I think it will probably be the same for most other people. We all relate to John somewhat. He's balancing a lot of stuff. When you grow up, especially, life, hits you harder. It's tough to balance it, so you can't help but feel empathy for John, who clearly is a caring dad. He clearly likes Molly. He's just struggling. And when you're Donna, we all relate to being that, curious school child, wanting to go out and explore, maybe feeling like you're being held back by your family a little bit. But with Mina, it's like I just don't relate to any of the story. And I'm not saying that's what needs to do, but she works for this organization that works in tech, I believe. But I just sort of look at it like, yeah, there's nothing really pulling me here that much. I think she probably has the weakest opening chapter as well. A lot of them are just about introducing characters at this stage. But at least with the other two, with Donna, you get this really interesting follow scene, and with John, you get the school run, and you get, some really quirky dialogue. Mina, I think you're literally just, having an interview. You're in a lift speaking to your boss. Then you meet your the person you're cheating on your husband with, and then you meet your family, and I think it wraps it up. So I don't know
Yeah,
if you agree with me, but I think Mina probably has the slowest starter.
yeah, definitely. And that comes on to a point I was going to say, actually, that what I found with the other two chapters, which we'll sort of get onto in a minute, the ending to Mina's chapter, there was no real cliffhanger. I'm pretty sure it ended with her just laying in bed, and then she looks at her phone, and it's clearly like this, like LinkedIn or something. This Amy girl is on there, and then she sort of has like a look of worry on her face, and then that's it. And I was like, oh right, okay, so that's chapter one then, and then just moved on to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, as someone who played it a few months ago, um, a lot of the characters and stories I remember less than the other two, and that's a good way of judging a game for me, is how memorable things are. And I'm telling you now, for someone who hasn't played it in a few months, I remember Donna and John's stories much more vividly than I do Mina's. I actually had to look up Mina's name again because I thought it was something completely different as well. So, that definitely tells you what you need to know. So, we'll move on then. So, who did you play second? Was it John or Donna?
It was Donna. So yeah, the Stranger Danger story.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. So, that's the one where you start, where you wake up, correct? And then you're heading off to see your friends, Vic, I believe, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the basic premise of this one is you're in your bedroom, you go and see your family, and I really like this bit actually because again, this could be something that's just like British people will be familiar with, but like her family and like a family friend are sat there playing Go Fish, like it's this card game, and I particularly like this bit because this is sort of a card game that we'd play in college. So just sort of the relatability straight away, like I was sort of thinking, oh yeah, sort of I know what's going on here. So Donna's got this sister called Emma. She's a police officer. She's sort of quite intense. She wants to know what Donna's doing. She's sort of on her back quite a bit. Then there's the mum, and she's sort of quite laid back. She's like, yeah, enjoy yourself with it's Vic or Vivek. It's one of the two. And then you've got this other friend who doesn't really sort of get a look in. She doesn't get explored. But then you essentially, yeah, you run to your friend's house. Is it Felix? No, Vivek, isn't it?
Yeah, this
And
one's
then
Vic, yeah.
yeah, so there's so many names, I don't remember them. So yeah, you get there, and then you sort of have this moment where like you see this stranger walking with this girl, and they go into this house. And at first, you think it's just sort of kids watching them, and then like Vivek comes out with, "Oh, I've been watching this guy for a while." And immediately you sat there thinking, "Oh, you're a bit of a creep." And then the characters actually, yeah, you're like, the characters come out with that, and you're like, "Yeah, good," because that's exactly what I'd be thinking. And he says, "Yeah, so the people that go into that house, they don't come out of it." I was thinking, oh, straight away, there's a bit of a mystery here. So sort of my engagement with the episode has gone up a bit. And so you then have this little mini game, which I'm assuming it's literally just them passing the time while they wait to see what's going on at the house. It shifts into first person. You got to like throw like these stones or something to hit all of these objects. And now going back, I do know there's an achievement for it, but I didn't get it because obviously balls one of them up. But yes, sort of a nice little sort of a bit of variety in the gameplay, because at this point I really have felt that you have just sort of been pressing buttons and walking through the game. And I know I've sort of said a couple of negatives already, but I hope this isn't an ongoing thing with this game. But I do feel that you are just sort of walking through the game. It's not like that you can pick things up. There's no collectibles. You are literally just walking through it. So to have this little moment where it sort of changes the gameplay mechanics up a bit, I really appreciated it. And from there on in, you just sort of follow this guy to this sort of, it looks like an abandoned swimming pool. And I suppose again, I know I'm sounding really negative in this video, but I'm just being honest. You don't have this QTE where like you're like climbing up things, and I really liked it. It was something you mentioned, mate, that was in Heavy Rain, where like you're pressing buttons and then you've got to like hit another button with another finger and then another button with another finger. And I was thinking, oh, brilliant! Like there's sort of like different things, like sort of these little quick time events and these like little mini games. And I did it all right, and then she falls over and she goes, "Oh, let's get out of here." And I'm like, I definitely didn't balls that up. So that's clearly something that happens anyway. Like maybe they expect you to fail that bit, which felt a bit unjustified. And again, it sort of ties back into this whole thing of you want it to be an interactive game, but it's just basically linear. Like the sense of choice really is just an illusion. Like arguably worse than Telltale at this point. But having said that, I do think that this is the strongest opening of the three at the moment. They then run away. Donna gets caught behind by the stranger, and it looks like he's going to help her, and then Becky just whacks him over the head with this pole. And yeah, it was sort of like, oh wow, like have they potentially got a dead body on their hands now? But sure enough, they sort of string him up to a chair, and they're sort of sat there like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then the guy wakes up, and it's just a great cliffhanger. So I know I've banged on a bit there actually, but I'd definitely say that was probably my favourite of the three in terms of the openings. Is that the same for you?
So in terms of judging my favorite one, it's really difficult with which one I prefer out of Donna and John. They're definitely the stronger of the two. I think I agree. Donna potentially has a stronger opening. I think John's story is probably better throughout. I think there are periods with Donna's where it does stale up at times. But it'd be interesting to see what you think about that. Now that I think back on it, they both have their pros and cons. But yeah, like I say, both are head and shoulders above of Mina's. Another reason for that being is that this Donna opener actually throws so much more at you in terms of layers, depths, and characters than Mina's one does. Mina, you'll probably meet about 6 characters, like including the family, the guy you're cheating with, a few work colleagues. Donna's story not only chucks like your friend group at you, but the stranger and your family as well, with your sister and your sister's girlfriend. But yeah, one thing I really like about the story as well is just the dynamic of the friend group, the way her, Vivek, and Becky chat. The conversation's very British, and it's a very believable school group. I feel often you'll see Netflix or TV shows or movies try and depict these school groups, and they completely fail, whether it's casting 30-year-olds to play as them, whether people that aren't from that country are writing the dialogue, and then the dialogue ends up saying stuff that those kids would never ever say.
Thrash? You mean stage diving, or...?
You're such a poser. If you can't even name a simple nose slide or a tray flip, you should walk on.
For example, I'm thinking of some great games here, such as, Life is Strange, for example, where they'll have Max jump into a swimming pool yelling "Cowabunga," which no one would ever say, or whether it's Heavy Rain, where you've got Canadians playing people from Philadelphia, and the Canadian and French accents still really bleed through, and it just kind of takes the sting out of the feel they're trying to get in the theme.
Well, at least you won't get beat. Lil Rain never hurt nobody.
But I really liked Donna's friend group, Vivek and Becky. Whether they're talking about what they're going to do with the stranger, the board, the banter they're having. Another thing I liked as well is the Britishness really bleeds through on this, whether it's down to the school uniforms Donna's wearing, like you say, the Go Fish game, even just little things such as the fish and chip shop being named the Codfather. If you're from Britain, you'll know, there's chippies, and they'll always have like a pun in the name, or most of them will. So it's just really refreshing to see that kind of detail and intricacy in the game. So I'll move on to the mini game you mentioned. Now, a random tangent here. I don't know if you remember me telling you, but there's a trophy that I struggled with a little bit. It's a fairly easy game to platinum, but that trophy did cause me some frustration. It took me a few attempts to do, especially when you throw the stones at everything. but the bin you have to be absolutely spot on because you might throw it slightly over or slightly, under. And to get the trophy, you can't miss, by the way. That's something you need to know. Like, you can't miss one stone. If you do, you have to restart the level all over again, and you've got to wake up as Donna again, run to the fish and chip shop. So the amount of times I did that Donna running to Vivek's fish and chip shop at the start, like probably about 8 times. I'm so sick of that opening chapter for that alone. But I can still, yeah, I can still appreciate it's a great chapter. Even, like things such as like the song that plays, there's a lot of good music in the game as well, actually. But yeah, no, I really like Donna's story. The mystery element of it as well, following the stranger, because it's just relatable. I don't know if anyone else can relate to it, but when you and your friend groups would just be bored, you weren't 18 yet, you couldn't go to pubs, you'd have to entertain yourselves. And doing dumb stuff like following strangers or just trying to make your own adventures up was things you would do. So yeah, I completely like this bit. And yeah, the cliffhanger as well, like you mentioned. I bet you're really curious to see what happens with the stranger and the friend group, how that dynamic works. I also really liked the scenery and the artwork of it. His eyes lighting up in green and lighting up that whole swimming pool building. I thought it was really well done. A lot of it as well was a little unrealistic, such as how the stranger got out to you so fast, where you had to climb out the window and down, and the stranger got there really quickly. But I don't expect it to be a perfect game. Like you say, the walking and the linear nature of it can really take the sting out of it sometimes. But yeah, I thought Donna really strong opener. But yeah, I'm really curious to with how you're gonna cope and see as that story goes on. I don't know if you have any comments on that, or if you're happy to go on to John next.
I mean, just to touch back on the achievement, it sounds like it's got a whiff of 100 Days about it. You know what I mean? The rock paper scissors thing.
Oh yeah, the 400 days with what's his name, Wyatt.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, by the way, that I landed it in the bin, but I must have missed one of the others at some point. So
yeah, because it doesn't matter if you have any spare stones to throw. You just have to hit everything first time. If any of them miss, then you have to restart. And I just didn't know that at the time, so I was just wasting time thinking it should pop when it didn't need to. But yeah, I just had a little bit of a. It wasn't difficult per se. It's just if you miss one, it's just frustrating. You got to go all the way back, and it just it was a little bit of a bummer. But nothing too much of a hassle, such as other platinums I've tried to get before.
But yeah, no, ready to move on to John's chapter if you are.
Yeah, of course. So quite a strong opener, I thought. What did you think of John?
Yeah, I like this chapter. I'd say that it has sort of like a fairly sort of slow start. Obviously, you're getting ready. There's some like funny little mini games where like you're brushing your teeth and you sort of like move it like 5 times, and he's like, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah.
And then he has to like go back and get the phone for his kid and walk her to school. And again, like the school in the game, it's called Cherry Tree. And again, like this was a little moment of relatability for me, because that's actually a school where I did work experience when I was not the school, but it was a school called Cherry Tree that I did work experience at when I was younger. So sort of to see that, it's like it's most the tiniest little thing. It can just sort of go a long way with how like your general mood is with the chapter, which I didn't feel at all with Mina's one. Whereas obviously at the other two I did. And you then obviously you meet the guy Jack, who's clearly his name is his neighbour. He's a gym goer, and you exchange post, and then he goes to work, and it's great because like there's little things where he has to scan his Oyster card, and again sort of tapping into this whole Britishness theme. It's all just little things that you relate to, especially when he finishes work. Like anyone that's worked in London will know when this particular bit, like he finishes work and he goes to train station, and then it just says like delayed, like all of his trains are delayed, and he's like, oh, you know, for God's sake, sort of thing. Like the number of times that's happened to me, because like all you want to do is get home at that point. So I was completely buying into it, and the fact he works in an office as well. I mean, I've sort of exclusively worked in offices, and you've got sort of a whole range of characters in there. In this particular game, you've got Clive, who seems to be a bit of a job's worth. He likes to sort of stir the pot a little bit and maybe wind people up, and I think everyone can relate that they sort of know those sorts of characters in the workplace. And then, yeah, he comes home. Oh, actually, no, sort of, I've missed a massive crucial bit. You then see the stranger, which you actually haven't touched on the prologue, but like you see the stranger from the prologue, and you bump into Jack again, and sort of he almost sort of like holds both of your arms, and it does something really weird, and you're both like, oh, what's going on? But then that's explained later on, because like clearly you sort of switch bodies, and that's sort of how the episode ends, and you think, oh, you know, what's going on here? You know, how are they going to sort of resolve this? What's this stranger guy about? Because he seems quite friendly at the beginning, and he seems to know who the two school kids are, like when they're running away from the police. So I'm definitely on board with that one as well, but I'd probably edge it to Donna's chapter in terms of my favourite.
Yeah, definitely. So, what do you make of the characters then? So, obviously, you've got John, who you play as. You've got the daughter, or the Molly, Jack. You meet Shazia and Clive as well, I believe. Yeah, like there's less characters than the other chapters, but probably a little more depth than, say, you know, in the likes of me in this chapter. Are you a fan of the cast you've got going on there?
Yeah, they seem okay. Shazia, yeah, just sort of, again, it just seems like a friendly work colleague. They give her a little bit of depth, didn't they, on the way to work, by saying, you know, oh, you're late, and oh, I went out with Darren again last night. So it's sort of like this general chit chat that you can sort of experience, you know, with people that you're not necessarily very close to, but you know, it's sort of because you're in the workplace, you can reveal certain details of your life, I suppose, if you're that way inclined. The daughter, yeah, you know, that she seems like a decent enough character. I don't know if she'll have a role to play later on or not. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the cast in John's chapter. Do you feel the same way? Is there sort of characters that you sort of not particularly like or do like?
Yeah. I really like the cast in John's story. So, John, really relatable, just really tired. You know, like you say, living in London, just feels like you're getting a run of bad luck even. You've got Clive, kind of like the horrible boss. Just, I think we've all had someone like that. Like you say with Shazia in the chatting, I do actually agree. I feel like they put even more Britishness in the chat, just a layer of relatability there. Not so much that it takes away from the story, but enough that you think it would be believable in actual chat that was happening. And then you know, I'll move on to Molly. Actually, I think she might be my favorite character in the game. Like, not only is she adorable, but she's hilarious. Whether she's mentioning, you know, getting in, like the mouth wash with the dragon on the bottle, forging signatures, whether, you know, she goes on about eating jelly for dinner. Like, I just think there's never a dull moment with Molly. I think she's a really well crafted character, and to be honest, I wanted to see way more of Molly. Yeah, probably my favorite side character in the game. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the cliffhanger you mentioned as well, or it ends on the body swap with the neighbor Jack, right? So yeah, do you have any thoughts about how the story's going to progress with that?
I mean, not really. I suppose if I had to hazard a guess, it would probably be something along the lines of, you know, they run into each other, Jack and John, they're thinking, what's going on? What are we going to do? And then I suppose they're going to have to go on the hunt for this stranger guy because he's the one that led them to this situation in the first place. As far as sort of embellishing my theory from there, I can't really go anywhere apart from that. Because I think it's quite clear that there's going to be some sort of science fiction stuff going on. I don't know why. Sort of whenever I sort of see a very light green, I sort of almost assume it's something alien, something science fiction going on.
Yeah,
Like you do when you step into the light at the beginning of the game. So yeah, I'll just have to. I mean, that's sort of my thoughts for now. Maybe in sort of future episodes, I'll get a stronger handle of where I think it's going.
yeah, definitely. I think as the chapters progress, it'll be interesting for you to see how the three stories themselves link, and not only that, but yeah, like you'll see a few side characters from the other chapters appear in the other ones as well. So you'll sort of see the three worlds slowly merging together, and it's really interesting to see. So I'm really intrigued to see how you're gonna, what you're gonna think about it. So before we wrap things up, just in a quick summary, I guess, what would you like to see different, or what do you hope improves from the game? What do you like so far? So yeah, what are you hoping going on with the second chapter there?
I think it's actually very simple to sum up what my thoughts are on this so far. In terms of storytelling and character building, I'll give it a tick. In terms of gameplay, I think it's bad. I think the presentation of the world is very nice, but it just doesn't do it for me with the whole that you are literally just walking to a place. When you get to said place, the dialogue choices and the QTEs don't seem to be that important at all. So I think if you're new to this, if you're sort of listening to this and you're thinking about playing Last Stop, my initial verdict would be if you can oversee the gameplay elements of it, and you can just appreciate a story, then go for it. But if gameplay is like very important to you, I'd probably give it a miss. I'm probably I'd say it's a mixed bag for me. At the minute, I'll go straight down the middle and say like it's a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But
Yeah, definitely.
that's where I sit with it, I reckon, at the moment.
I
Maybe
do agree. I think story they definitely go really strong on. Some really good openers there. Gameplay they definitely leave at the door a little bit. And usually I wouldn't mind the walking element so much. If you look at a game such as a walking simulator like Gone Home or Edith Finch or Firewatch, I believe those games get away with it because they don't lie what they are. They say we're a walking simulator. Last Stop obviously gives you the illusion of choice. And if you give that illusion of choice, I expect those choices to make an impact almost. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but I almost feel Gone Home and Edith Finch get away with that kind of style because they are walking simulators. Last Stop probably not so much because that's not what it's advertised as.
Yeah, I think that point holds true in many ways because obviously we are playing this. It's a choice-based game, and I suppose it's a bad sign that early doors. I mean, how in like Telltale games, the dialogue options appear to be very different, even if they can be the same outcome. They appear to be different. On this, it's like they don't even try to hide it. There'll be a moment like you might be just like running down some stairs, and then the options might be like, "Let's go," or "Shall we head down here?" And all right, let's go on the move. Something like that. They're all very similar things that you can tell that the dialogue option afterwards or what the other character says is going to be the same thing regardless.
Yeah, like I'm looking at an example here because I have a bit of a video up, and the options here, for example, as Donna, at one point you can either say, "God damn it," tell it how it is, or "No point sugarcoating it." And those three things are almost the same, right? So they'd have no effect on the dialogue that follows it. Well, at least with Telltale's The Walking Dead, they'll probably dance around it a little bit and have a few diversions. Probably not changing the story, but very much changing the dialogue. While I believe Last Stop, it might just be one phrase that changes. So it's probably, you could argue not good enough. And I think 5 out of 10 is very accurate. But it's nice to see you're enjoying the story, the Britishness, the characters. Are you glad you've picked it up? Would you say that's an hour wasted, an hour you enjoyed, or is it very much a wait and see? A bit like I was with Alan Wake, I guess.
I think it's almost a bit of both. I suppose it's a wait and see, because if ultimately I get let down, then I'm going to think, wow, I've just I've done that for 6 hours, that walking and picking things that don't matter. But at the same time, at the same time, the hour did go pretty quick. And you know what? I quite liked the fact that they were 20-minute chunks, as opposed to sort of being these very long and drawn out chapters. So I'm gonna have to sit on the fence on this at the moment, because I've got sort of strong thoughts on the story and the gameplay already, and who knows, maybe it will stay very much the same, maybe one will get stronger, i.e. the gameplay, I'm hoping. But yeah, that's where I sit.
Okay, yeah, brilliant to see. So obviously, if you're reading in the comments, like I say, I'd like to know if you've played this game, what you thought of it. If you very much agreed or disagreed with our points, let us know. We'd love to hear. Another thing I said as well, if you've played Last Stop and you're not from the UK, what did you think of the world? Was it very eye-catching for you? I'm really intrigued to know these things. So yeah, I guess we'll play again on episode 2. It's been quite a nice change from Alan Wake, a very different game, very different pace. So yeah, I guess we'll see you in episode 2 then for the Last Stop series. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yep, see you later, guys.